Alright, I have to completely redo this video because apparently I can't do math correctly. When I did the math correctly, I realized, oh wait a minute, Arthur's not going from bad to mid, he's going from bad to great. Like, this is absolutely insane for him in the capacity of him being a buster looper for free quests. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, Arthur just got a buff over on the JP side of things, and I was over here kind of being a little somber because as longtime viewers of the channel will know, I'm a huge fan of Arthur. You know, I love Prototype, I love Prototype 2, I'm forgetting what the name of it is called, but as soon as I was getting into Fate, you know, I watched Fate Zero, watched Apocrypha, I started tearing into the wikis as I think a lot of fans do when they're getting into Fate, to just find out about all these little nuggets and stuff that's going on with other franchises and whatnot. And I got really attached to Prototype because I thought a lot of the ideas were just super dope, right? Like, I love that everything was just the craziest thing you've ever seen, basically. Like, everything was just completely nuts. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I highly encourage you to just go on the Fate wiki, just go to Prototype, type in like Arthur, Ku Proto, Gilgamesh Proto, go to the first war with Brynhildr, you know, anything along those lines. Just go have yourselves a fun time. Go look up Arash, go look up Ozymandias. These guys are way more cracked than you think. They are insane. They're out of their minds. You know, you'll have newfound respect for people like Paracelsus and Jekyll and Hyde. Bros are insane, right? So just PSA for that. But Arthur is actually way more nuts than I was giving him credit for, because initially, you know, I looked at the damage charts and I was like, oh, that's not really that big of a buff, because just for context, his third skill now gives him a 30% battery instead of a 20%, so now he is in that buster looping threshold as long as you do have Oberon. His power mod against super large is now 3 turns, so you can loop this for a 200% power mod, which actually might be more relevant than most people think. And then he's giving himself and the entire party a 20% attack buff for 3 turns. The thing that I missed out on was not this over here, it's the first skill. I forgot that Arthur's buster buff is 3 turns, and some people, the gears are spinning in your head that means this is not his real attack stat. This is his turn 1 attack stat, because the fact that this and this are on 5-turn cooldowns means you pop them immediately, you go into the next wave, they're on 4-turn cooldowns, double Koyanskaya, they pop their batteries, that's now gone. He has looped both of these up, and let me just show you what his actual damage is looking like. When you give him his 100% buster buff, because he's going to loop that 50% buster buff, and then he's going to loop the 20% attack buff, he's looking kind of good. Like, is that a good damage number? And just to show people that might be kind of doubters being like, did you do the math correctly? Are you okay? For one, this is a calculator. It's really hard to get this wrong. But look, if you look at his base damage with the 50% buster buff, the 20% attack buff, 10% NP damage buff, he's at 27,594. If you look at the chart over here, 27,593. I'm pretty sure it's like 1 decimal placement where my calculator is rounding up and theirs is rounding down. But you give him the fact that on wave 2, he's going to loop this, and he's going to loop this over here. Bro is looking kind of insane. Like 42, like almost 43,000 damage average. Like, his low end is higher than Artoria's high end. Like, that is insane. And the good thing for him is that Artoria can't loop all of her skills. She can loop the charisma, she can't loop the second skill, because justifiably, they put that thing on a 1-turn cooldown, because that thing is a little bit insane. Getting a 50% buster buff as well as a 30% NP damage buff, yeah, they were right to go ahead and put that thing on a leash, because that one is a little insane. If you were able to loop that, she might be one of the best loopers in the game, right? Just because of damage. And that's really all the buster cares about. They don't really care about your refundability. They care about your ability to do math with the batteries, right? Do you have 30%? Okay, you need Oberon. Or, I mean, technically, if you have 30% and you have a battery on your NP, you know, say like someone like normal Artoria, who we're just talking about, then you can kind of get in the club. But otherwise, if you have a 50% battery, you know, you're good with anybody. You know, you can use like Waver, Oberon, whatever. But 30%, you're exclusively locked into Oberon, which, to be fair, he's not going to hate, because he has a little bit of an NP damage buff, and every little bit of NP damage is going to matter when you're using Oberon's first skill plus his third skill to maximize the effect of that NP damage, right? So he's actually sitting really pretty. Now, let me just show you guys as well these super large enemies over here. I was actually thinking that a lot of this doesn't actually matter, but you'd be surprised how many of these enemies actually come up in farming quests. I mean, the 90++ right now over on NA has a Cerberus on the first wave. For Lilim Harlot, which is going to be the collab coming up in a couple of months, the Beast thing over here is going to be in the first wave. Then it's, you know, 3 giants. Then I think it's Da Vinci Riders, the last node, something along those lines. these are not enemies that are infrequent in 90 plus to 90 plus plus content. Sure, they might not be all that frequent when you start doing like the lower end content, like the level 90, the 80, the 75, but nobody really cares about doing those because they're not the most efficient ones to do. They don't give you the most drops or every single drop, plus like the additional extra bond you get from the 90 plus plus nodes. And there's enemies in here that you see, like you have Spriggans, you have these demon things, you have the giant dragons that appear, right? You have the giant skeletons. There's a surprising amount of enemies that do have some recurability in these quests. I mean, Orochis, how many times have you seen these guys in free quests? I mean, these like bird things that came out with Ordeal Call 2, I'm expecting them to also start making appearances once we move forward in, you know, more events and whatnot. The large Onis as well. Like, sure, you may not see Comet's Oz, or you might not see, who is this guy? Yoshimoto. I did not read the event, so I have no idea who that guy was. But point being, you might not see these guys, but they will appear in these quests, and that will actually be really strong for Arthur, because a lot of the times, as you guys just heard me mention, 90 plus, they led off with this. The other one for like Little Harlot, they did lead off with this. So sometimes they do lead with these large enemies. I believe for Takasugi's event, they also led with one of these large big Nobus for the first wave, which is one of Buster's major issues, right? Is that they like to stack their damage to get to these insane highs over here, to have these like ridiculous amounts of damage. It's why characters like Arthur moving forward are going to be looking really nice, because all of their buffs are 3 turns, low cooldowns, meaning you can immediately loop those back to get insane amounts of damage. But being able to almost bank on the fact that they love throwing large guys at the very beginning of farming nodes, Arthur's going to benefit from that. Because if we go ahead and give him his power mod, because to be fair, he'll only, well, actually, I don't have to calculate this one because I already did it. 52,000 is not bad for a starting wave. It could be better, right? To be fair, you know, granted, could be better. And I don't think, just for people that like big numbers like myself, you know, I'll go ahead and show, like, once you stack it, if you had everything optimally, yeah, you'd be hitting some really insane numbers. You'd be doing, like, ridiculous single target damage. I don't know how real this is, because it's really, I'm trying to recall a lot of the times when I saw large enemies on like wave 2, because you're probably not going to see them on wave 3, because that's usually just the servant and then maybe the servant plus one like random mob enemy, right? It's usually not some large enemy plus the servant. But to be fair, if it ever is, Arthur's going to clock them in the face. I guess he also benefits from the fact, because I was thinking about the fact, if you do go into a third wave and you have one of these large enemies, like say a Spriggan, and then, I don't know, it's a Saber Spriggan, and you also have Artoria for some reason. Let's just keep using her, right? He's not going to get that insane power mod damage on her, but it is nice that you can bank on face cards with this guy, because again, you will be able to refund this. You can pop this immediately on wave 1, and then if you need to do face cards, you can pop it again on your third node, and you'll have 100% crit damage, and you'll have bombed 30 stars that you have immediate access to almost guarantee you'll be able to do the crits. The only thing that's going to be annoying about that is getting the card RNG, as ideally you would like to find the Buster cards, because you're going to be getting those massive Buster buffs from Koyanskaya, but this is really good for Arthur. I am really happy to see the direction he has turned into. I could understand maybe some people being a little annoyed, like rolling their eyes, being like, oh man, it's just another farming buff. It's just another buff for a guy to be able to do good farming, like they did with Iskandar. But unfortunately, that is most of the game. You're mostly going to be farming free quests. I mean, think about all the times you got to clear out an event shop, or you got to go do a lottery, or even technically farm through some of the story chapters, because a lot of those nodes are farming nodes. You got to do all these random minutia nodes before you can get to the bosses, where the real fun is at, in my opinion. And so having those servants that can kind of mop that up for you is really strong. And even going into some of those boss fights, this guy's going to be good. I mean, I could already see some bosses that are coming up in the future. I mean, now I'm not going to argue that, oh, this guy's going to be really good into Comet's Oz. He's going to be really good into Cagliostro. Or I believe this is from Takasugi's event. It's going to be the next White Day event. I believe that's where that comes from. I'm not arguing that he's going to be good for those boss fights, because he and the double Koyanskayas are pretty much going to be banking on just running these guys over as fast as possible. But it's still there, right? You know, if you ever do see like a Lancer big guy, or a Berserker big guy, or you just have a really strong Arthur, so you can go in neutral against, say, like a Saber big guy, or something along those lines, he's going to be a really nice option for people that have him. It was one of those things that when I was first getting into Fate Grand Order, I was a little sad when I got him, because they made him really bad in the game, and I was going for waiver. It's the original, like, Arthur White Day rate-up. where he and Waver were on there. And I was like, okay, if I get Arthur, it's not the worst thing in the world, but I'm really gunning for Waver because I need that support. And I got Arthur, and I was like, ah, man, like, they really made my goat absolutely washed in this game. But it's finally glad to see it come full circle. And don't you worry, I have the boy 10-10-10 and everything. Working on grailing him because, well, Morgan kind of ate all of my grails, so 120ing a servant takes a lot out of you. But, yeah, I'm happy to see that he's going to be really good. You can let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Again, this really is more of just like, dude, look at these big numbers this guy's going to be hitting. Look at these big math numbers that you could do. But I do think realistically, this should be a number that a lot of people do gravitate towards. The fact that he is going to be one of the harder hitting AoE sabers in the game is just very strong, right? Taking into account the fact that he can double stack. I mean, a lot of these other guys can do that as well. Like, I believe Altera also, I think all of her buffs are double stackable, like the NP damage buff and the attack buff, which I think does technically mean that she jives better with Oberon because she already has the massive NP damage buff as opposed to 10%. But again, it does help out Arthur a lot. Like, I'd actually be kind of curious to run all the numbers when like they're all on like the prime Oberon setup to see who comes out on top. I think that'd be really interesting. But yeah, with all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. You guys have yourselves a nice one, and let me know the thoughts in the comments down below. Peace.